of a sudden a year or two later weren't there anymore. So, I feel very lucky every time we go to a streaming event and I see players and people that I've known almost a decade now. It's very exciting and it's very rewarding. I think it took until just a few years ago to really accept, like, wow, we really have made a name for ourselves and we really are helping a lot of people. So that's exciting.
Hello, everybody. It is another week of excitement and adventure with your intrepid host here, Andrew Dupie. It's Leaders Talk. I am the Chief Relationship Officer, and I am very excited today to have with me Bonnie Bruderer. So let me introduce to you Bonnie. She's got one heck of a CV. Bonnie is the founder of Binge Networks, and she has an extensive resume as a successful entrepreneur. She was selected as one of the top 30 CEOs of 2020 by the Silicon Valley Review, and her company has won the Innovation and Excellence Award, the Top Blog Award, the Best Streaming and Monetization Platform Award, along with a lot of others. She's certified as a corporate performance coach for Columbia University, a business marketing strategist, renowned speaker, branding consultant, senior mentor for the Anthony Robbins companies, and a life mastery event director in Fiji. Man, that's impressive. And that's not all, ladies and gentlemen. She is a four-time author, an Ironman finisher, just to name a few. She's been a guest on NBC, ABC, Fox, The New Morning Show, and now, most impressively of all, she's a guest on Leaders Talk. Bonnie, welcome.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, you forgot that I'm a mom of two toddlers.
Well, now we know. Here we are.
But thank you.
I tell you, that is one heck of an intro. Let our audience know a little bit more about you.
Yeah. So yes, I have had a very long and winding career. I came from the internet and tech startup space very early on in my career days. And then about 5 years into that, I helped launch companies like City Search, Active Networks, NBC Internet, and a few others. And then I took a pivot and I went into the human potential space and worked for Tony Robbins, Harvey McKay. I've worked with pretty much every speaker that you could have a book by your bedside table. At some point, I've done an event where they participated, from Deepak to John Gray to pretty much everybody. And then about 2014, after I graduated from Columbia University, as you explained, I started a television show in New York City. And that's really what led us to where we are today. And we are one of the largest streaming, licensing, and distribution companies available, working with over 400 different TV outlets. So in a nutshell, that is kind of what got me here and onto your Leaders Talk show.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely awesome. Yeah, we were very familiar with Binge even before we spoke with you. So tell us a little bit about what it takes to be a CEO or run something in that streaming world, this new, extremely busy business space that, everybody now is absolutely just trying to get into and make a name in.
Sure. So we have been in the industry for 9 years, which is pretty much unheard of. Roku, which is a company most people are familiar with, I started in this industry back when they were launching. So that gives you kind of an idea. And now it's really something nobody knew what I was talking about for the first 5 years. I would talk about streaming, OTT, and then just this blank look. And now really everybody, if you're not trying to get into the streaming world, is a streaming consumer. And you may not even know it, but if you watch Netflix, Hulu, Tubi, Pluto, any of those, that is the streaming world. Those are some of the top companies that are involved in the streaming world. So it's a very exciting, as far as what it takes to be a leader. It takes a lot of kahunas. It's a very male-dominated field. It's a very aggressive, fast-paced, moving field. But I think because I've been in it for so long, I've really established a long track record of success. So it's not, every time I go to these streaming events and conventions, there's all these newbies on the block, which is great. I always love to see innovation. But I think just sort of the more marathon approach, like I just keep running. And it's really got us to where we are today. And we have won a lot of awards, as you explained, and we've helped thousands of people get their content into streaming platforms. So it's very exciting. Anyone on my team will probably tell you I am a driver. I expect a lot. I move very fast, and they do too. And I've just been very fortunate and blessed to work with some of the most incredible people, pretty much in every facet of the company. So so that's a day in the life.
Well, tell us a little bit about visibility, because that's something that's on the mind of a lot of our listeners. They're many of them are business leaders themselves. They're thinking about, how do I stand out in increasingly crowded fields? You're a female entrepreneur CEO. We're a female-led company ourselves that managed to stand out from the crowd as well. So let's go into a little bit of the story about how you were able to make yourself a brand that was able to stand above and beyond the male-dominated world that you mentioned.
Yeah, so our story is incredibly unique in that we've evolved over time. And I think because we were small and mighty, we were able to change with the trends. I think so many companies, they create a business plan, they create a model, and then they just commit wholeheartedly, which is what it takes. But then maybe the industry changes or the opportunities change and they don't have the ability to pivot. Because we were small and self-funded back in the day, around the 2014s when we started, I just kept following the trends. And our business model has evolved probably 6 or 7 different times. Most recently, when the pandemic hit, we decided to really shift our business model. And each time I've done that, it's required pretty much shutting off the entire revenue stream for about 6 months until we get to where we're going, which is very scary. When you have people depending on you for their job and paying their rent and their food and their kids and all of that. But I've always known it was the right thing to do. And I've always been very committed. I think working for people like Tony Robbins and Harvey Mackay really taught me mindset and just committing to a goal, committing to a goal like I did with Ironman. I was like, I'm going to finish. I don't care what happens during the 15 hours and 45 minutes it took me to do it. But I knew I was going to finish. And that's really how I run my business. I know we're going to be a top brand, a top company always. And sometimes, the muck, the day-to-day is so stressful, so challenging, but I don't let it bother me because I know, just like when you're running, you're like, it's just a cramp. You're going to run through it. It's going to be fine. So I've really adopted my mindset. A lot of my physical career and what I did in triathlon and competing, it applies directly to how I run my business and run my life, quite frankly. It definitely, I'm different. Not everyone has that or needs to have that. A lot of these companies are very well funded. There's a lot of Silicon money. There's a lot of Wall Street dollars. And we've seen companies come and go that had, $25 million worth of funding and just sort of laughed at us in the day. And then all of a sudden, a year or two later, weren't there anymore. So, I feel very lucky every time we go to a streaming event and I see players and people that I've known almost a decade now. It's very exciting and it's very rewarding. I think it took until just a few years ago to really accept wow, we really have made a name for ourselves and we really are helping a lot of people. So that's exciting.
And help comes to mind, everything that you just said. You talked about, how mentorship helped you get where you are. And now I see that you are also, branching into, being an author, a coach, a consultant, a mentor. Tell us a little bit about the importance of mentorship and what drew you to becoming a mentor yourself.
So I would say my mentors have been both physical and direct relationships, as well as just observant. So I have people that I admire, like Oprah. When she launched her own network, I very much wanted to model that and I wanted to be like her. And I voraciously read everything that she had put out. I listened to her interviews over and over. And I would ask myself when a decision came, what would Oprah do? And so there's that type of mentorship. And then I have been fortunate to work, shoulder to shoulder with some of the most successful and really leading players in the human potential space. I learned so much in my over a decade with Tony Robbins, just by observing and just watching and seeing, when you hear him day after day for a decade, sometimes 16 hours a day, it sticks and it really shows you that you can create a lot more. And I was very fortunate. I worked for Harvey Mackay, who wrote the Swim with the Sharks series. I worked very closely with him for 5 years and would definitely consider him a mentor. And he is somebody that just pushes to the brink. And then when he sees you're about to snap, then kind of pulls back. And I learned a lot from that. I learned, never to waste seconds or minutes to get as much as possible done. And really that pushing the boundaries is what it takes to consistently move the company forward. So yeah, I've been very fortunate to have all kinds of mentors in my day.
Is that what drove you to becoming an author?
Yes, I think just being in that field and having a powerful message to share, that part of my life feels like a completely different person or a different lifetime ago, because it has been over a decade. But yeah, I mean, it's human potential and constant improvement is something that is extremely important to me. I jokingly said my biggest accomplishment is having 2 toddlers. Like, I take everything seriously. When we're on the way to school on Friday and it's show and tell day, I make them rehearse 5-6 times. Like, this is my dump truck. A dump truck's from a construction site. Like, the little things matter. And I think that is really important. It's like, nothing is a rehearsal. Like, everything is the real deal. That's kind of how I treat every single day and every interaction. So I was fortunate to learn that from a lot of very successful people that I worked for and under.
Yeah. And see that, but that's interesting. It was a long time since you were an author, but the fact of the matter is that it's still kind of, even all these years later, that kind of an experience is still paying dividends for you in your current life and your current business and how you interact with everybody. Yes.
Absolutely. And I mean, just to tell on myself, I'm going to be totally honest. I actually went back and read my book like 5 years ago, and I was like, that's some pretty good advice. Like, I advised myself because I had forgotten what I had written, and it was helpful. I did some of the exercises, and of course you're in a different place, today than you were 5 years ago or 10 years ago. But yeah, I think that, it's been very helpful. And especially writing a book, it's sort of a goal. It's like every person's goal. It's really hard to come across a person that doesn't want to be an author, like that doesn't have a book inside of them. So I feel very proud of that accomplishment, and it's been a fun piece of the journey.
And how did you segue? Because this is something that many of our listeners are thinking about right now. It's like, okay, if I have a book though, how can I be like Bonnie? How can I take that book and begin to brand myself, turn that into something that I can then use to build out my business to where I have a big streaming streaming service that everybody wants to come and participate in. So what were kind of the steps that you did to translate being an author into your own success?
It's funny because like when I wrote the books, the whole concept was to promote the coaching, and that was a very effective vehicle for that. It helped me have credibility. I was on a lot of television shows. I was on Fox, I was on NBC, on the Hallmark Channel. So it built in credibility. It had a piece that, again, if someone orders your book off Amazon, like that is a whole different level than like, hey, here's my PDF. And even when I started the streaming company, I mean, it's really the same formula as a book, but we started as a TV show on cable and then grew into this multi-faceted international streaming licensing company that works with over 400 TV outlets. It's really the same formula. It's like you take one thing, you use that as a launching point and credibility, and to build, this massive McMansion that you're looking to build. And so I think it's really important, whatever your passion is, it doesn't have to be human potential or development or business, whatever your passion is, use, a book or whatever that piece is to get to where you want to go, to see that vision of that company become real.
And see, that leads me to the thought of storytelling, because when we talk about a book or when we talk about media creation, no matter what it is, whether it's a television show, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a book or a movie or even that little PDF, we're always really trying to relate to an audience a story. So talk to me a little bit about your opinions on storytelling and what that can mean for somebody to brand themselves.
Yeah, so it's really funny. All of my books, and then even today, what we're doing here, it's all authentic. I have taken so many courses on storytelling and master classes, and like, I absolutely get the importance of telling your story. But when it's something that's forced, I never felt comfortable. Like, I never felt good talking about achievements or anything of that nature. The only reason I can talk about it today is because we have had those successes. So I'm just talking about what's happened. I had the vision back in the early days, and I was telling the story of what we were going to create. And I think now the story is, because it's all already happened, it feels very natural and comfortable. So I didn't even prep for the interview, because it was like, you're just going to be asking me questions and I'm just going to speak from the heart. And that really is the story. That's how you tell the story of either where you're going or where you've been, that's going to inspire other people.
Yeah, and I love that. That's why I don't ever have pre-canned questions because I mean, if you can't have a conversation, back and forth, then I mean, what's the point? You need to actually be able to speak to what you know and topics that you have, and you should be able to back and forth with anyone.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, no, it's so true. And when we had our TV show, we interviewed over 700 guests on our show, and it would make people furious that we wouldn't give them questions. But I didn't have questions. I didn't prepare. I never read one person's book. I never, I would glance at their bio to get three. Actually, this is what I did. Right before we started, before the cameras rolled, I said, tell me the three most interesting things about you. And that's it. I never knew, people would get so upset. You didn't read my book. You didn't research me. I'm like, that's not the point. The point is, let's just tell your story. Let's get it told, and let's do it in a very natural and authentic way.
And for our audience, what are some other ways in which do you feel like they could be able to better tell their stories? I mean, do you have any hints or tips for them? And not just authorship, obviously, is something that we're extremely interested in because that's what we do. But yeah, what are ways in which you can relate your story to an audience to be able to translate that into building up a brand?
Oh my gosh, video. I mean, if you're an author, you need to have video, whether you're just sitting there reading your book and then talking about what each chapter means. The streaming world is just ripe with potential. I mean, we get people placed on networks that have like 142 million subscribers over here, 30 million over here. And these are different people than social media. These are committed viewers watching in their home. It's more of a lean back audience. I think every author should have their own TV show. They should have either an interview style show. They should have, if you're a travel author, you should have that sort of, it's really, you're doing yourself a disservice if you do not have video content going along with your book. Because imagine if you're just listening to the audio of this, you don't see me, you don't know, am I 20, am I 50? Like you don't, but when you get to see visually the person and the passion, you connect at a very different level. So I believe everybody should be doing video 100%. And I think that you should be utilizing the streaming world, the streaming platforms, in order to get that video out and to get in contact with millions and millions of eyeballs that you're missing just on social. Social's great, don't get me wrong, we do it every day, but there's an entire other world that, successful companies, successful brands, and people are using today. And it's exciting. Like I always think about it just like the internet days back in 95 when I worked at internet companies. The streaming world is pretty much that now for publicity, for sharing, for getting your message out. And just like the internet, it's going to get inundated. The rules are going to change. This is like a really cool Wild West moment that people are able to get their content on big streaming platforms.
Yeah, that actually was what I was thinking as you're talking about that. Now more than ever, do you feel it's important to have that kind of synergistic approach to everything? You can't look at, I just want to have a book, or I just want to have a podcast, or I just want to be a speaker. It's all now so interconnected with content creation that you can't just look at one element and not think about all of the others that you can use to amplify your signal.
100%. I mean, we work with content creators all the time. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the story that they were, a famous YouTuber and they were making money hand over fist, and then their account got shut down for whatever reason. Yeah. You have zero control. And maybe you did that for a decade and you were making millions of dollars gone overnight. There's talks of TikTok being banned. There's all of these different platforms. We saw Vine come and go. People think, oh, it's not going to happen. What was it? Periscope or whatever the Twitter had, these
I remember that one.
Big deal, and they're gone. And it can happen. And I mean, the streaming world's not going anywhere. We also take a very diversified approach. We feel that you should be as many places as possible and tell your story as many ways as possible. And I'll give you just a solid example. We have a show called Top Docs. It's a functional medicine specialist out of Kansas City, Missouri. He did, I think, 8 episodes of a show, just interviewing different experts and authors. We put him on a couple of our platforms. He was seen in South Africa on a television network we aired on, and a client flew from South Africa to Kansas City, Missouri, paid him $10,000 to work with him. So these are real concrete examples of how any entrepreneur, any infopreneur, anybody can really use video to grow your coaching practice, to grow your medical practice. If you're a fitness trainer, all of these things are possible for you. And it's really untapped for most people's marketing strategy.
Yeah. And the same can be said of a book. And I mean, books have about a 6,000-year lifespan, in which we can see that they had a pretty good track record so far. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say #1 selling book year after year, right? Yeah. So yeah. And it's a great compliment. Doing both together, you can't lose.
Awesome. Bonnie, as we kind of start to wind down just a little bit, we always have a little segment here where we talk to our audience about, what's a golden nugget? What's something that you have that you maybe haven't shared in our conversation here that they can absolutely use to brand themselves in their life and their business? As a coach, what would you suggest to somebody just as a mindset that they can approach this topic with?
Yeah, I mean, my favorite saying from the movie The Pursuit of Happiness is if you want something, go get it, period. I don't take no for an answer. I don't see problems. I only see, okay, we don't have the solution yet. And I just keep going and keep going like that hamster on the wheel until I find it. And I think that was an adaptive mindset. Like I wasn't raised with that. I didn't have it for a very long time. I would hit a wall and be like, oh, it can't be done. And I think that as you go along the entrepreneurial path, you really have to have that mindset. It's almost like a football game and you just keep going. Whoever's tackling you or pummeling you or bumping into you, you're just keep going and you're going to hit that end zone. And I think that's really the most important thing in business, because let's be honest, like we all have those crushing blows. We all have those days, months, quarters, years that are debilitating, COVID, like so many. Who would have thought a global pandemic, 4 years ago? Like it's crazy some of the things that can happen, but the people that really just persevere, redirect, and pivot to where they need to, I think are the more successful, at the end of the game.
And that makes me curious, especially when you're talking about video. I mean, I have a nickname at Leaders Press. They call me the camera-seeking missile. So I've never been afraid of getting. And I was a former educator. The audience of sixth graders is much a worse audience than this.
I mean, yeah, I'd say that's harder.
but how much pushback do you have as a coach, as a consultant, when people come to you and they're talking about wanting to get into media, of the fear of being in front of cameras and not being able to do it and not being able to pull off, what we do every day?
Okay, so here's the truth. I am like the worst coach on the planet, because I literally will tell people exactly what they need to do and nobody does it. And so they come back the next week and I'm like, I told you what to do. Like, why aren't you doing it? And I think that we all get in our own way. That's why I didn't continue coaching, because I was literally like, my head's going to explode. We've had the same conversation for a month and I'm just not like that. When I got my TV show, it's really funny. The agent booked me on somebody else's show. And then I came back, I was just so hungry, so voracious. And he said, listen, I've been an agent for 15 years. I'm going to tell you a piece of advice I've told like 400 of my clients and nobody's followed it. And he told me, and I followed it. I went to TV production school. I made a pilot. I got it picked up on 3 cable channels in New York City, unheard of, but I will follow, if someone has advice, I just follow it. And so that's the biggest advice I can give to somebody. Definitely don't try to hire me as a coach, because I'm just going to be like, well, dude, we talked about this, but really follow, success leaves clues. Tony Robbins used to always say that. And like, look at who has the success in the industry that you want and literally dissect every single thing that they do. I watch countless hours of interviews, documentaries on people that I admire and want to be like. Everybody, every CEO, I've seen their story. And I just, it's so helpful to constantly put that in your brain, because everyone has a similar path. Everyone had, oh my God, we almost failed. Even Jeff Bezos, like if you watch the new Amazon special, this is so close, like so crazy. His parents gave him their retirement fund, mortgaged their house, like crazy stuff. And it became Amazon. So I believe anything's possible if you're committed. There's always a way. But it really matters about the follow through. That's the big piece people miss. So you have to follow through.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Have some follow through, some resilience, and some perseverance. Bonnie, how can our audience find more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Go to bingenetworks.tv. You scroll down to the bottom, you can see all of our contact details. If you're interested in learning more about streaming, I would love to offer a free consultation to everyone on this call. So you can just email bonnie@bingechannels.com or go to bingeprograms.com and just book a call. Just let us know you saw me on Leaders Talk so we know who to thank. But yeah, I would love to help you if you're thinking of doing video, if you have a video series and you want to get on Tubi, Hulu, Pluto, any of those platforms, definitely book a time to chat.
Awesome. And those links are down below, ladies and gentlemen. Bonnie, it has been enlightening. It has been a pleasure. And we absolutely wish you the best of luck in everything you do going forward.
Thank you so much. Likewise. And thank you, everybody. It's so nice to meet you today.